So I scaled a brand new product from 0 to 8K a day on TikTok ads in under 7 days. And then I got zucked, or I guess zanged, because the founder of TikTok is named Zhang.
Zhang.
But anyways, in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down how I scaled from 0 to 8K a day in under 7 days on TikTok with a brand new product, a brand new pixel, a brand new store, and then got banned. Now, hopefully in this video, I can teach you how you can go ahead and replicate this process, but more importantly, just get started with TikTok if you haven't already taken that leap and taken that next step into diversifying your marketing platforms. We all know that Facebook is getting very, very challenging to remain profitable, so that leads us advertisers to have to adapt and overcome if we want to mitigate the risk of our businesses getting taken down for no reason, or to combat any of the constant marketing performance fluctuations that we often see on Facebook. All right, so I whipped out the big monitor for this one so that we can see all of the metrics and data all consolidated on one screen. So as you can see here, if we go from the time frame from the 30th, I believe, to the 6th of, so from May 30th to June 6th, this is the time period in which I ran the product. And I know it only says $17,000 in revenue. It actually did closer to around $26,000 revenue, and a majority of that was in the final 2 days of scale, because it started off around $1,000 to $2,000 a day, and then very quickly went up to around $8,000 a day at its highest. And it should have scaled a lot higher, but we ran across a lot of ad issues, and I'm going to talk about that here just in a second. So for the product being right around a 1.5 break-even ROAS, we had relatively healthy margins in quite a few campaigns that were very, very profitable. We averaged right around a 2.7 ROAS with about $6,000 spend, but again, in reality, that was closer to, I believe, a 4 ROAS. Now, as you can see here, when it comes to the metrics, it honestly doesn't look that far off of that of Facebook ads, right? We see about 30-cent CPCs, about $4 CPM, which is just like a really good CPM on Facebook. But honestly, it's not the best CPM that I've seen on TikTok. I've seen $1, $2, I've seen 90 cents. Generally, anything under like $3 to $5 is pretty good on TikTok, although the initial campaign started off with a much, much higher CPM for this product. Now we see a click-through rate of around 1.4. A lot of the best campaigns started off much higher at around a 3 or a 4 click-through rate, which is really good. And we saw a CPA around $15 with a break-even point of right around 25 to 27. Now for TikTok, I was going in expecting the conversion rate to actually be a lot less than Facebook, but in reality it was right around the same at a 1.76 conversion rate for a total of almost 400 purchases in under 7 days. So now really quickly, the way that I found the product is I actually saw someone running a TikTok creative on Facebook, and it was doing very, very well there. And when I went on TikTok, I saw a lot of organic content around it. So I used the strategy that I talked about in one of my previous TikTok videos to kickstart the creative launches. And then I got 2 influencers on board to film content for me and my brand that I wasn't even able to use because I got the account suspended. So without going into too much depth in each nitty-gritty campaign and every single edit and modification that I did, I'm going to give a general overview of what happened between day 1 and that final day 7 for me to be able to get to 8K a day. So basically on the first day, since we didn't have any true momentum with the pixel, we didn't have any momentum with the product, you actually usually don't want to dive straight into conversions as you would on Facebook, right? A while ago, it was actually a very popular thing on Facebook to start by warming up your pixel with a page view event or an add to cart event or something that was below that purchase optimization, so you can start to warm up that pixel and familiarize your audience with Facebook, so that once you did go for conversions, Facebook had a much better idea of who it is you were targeting. So now I see that same exact principle and strategy performing very well on TikTok, where if you give it a little bit of warm up spend to add to cart optimization campaigns, then you'll actually even get a couple of purchases if it's a true winner. And then you can analyze some KPIs and launch it almost as a prerequisite to see if it's eligible for checkout or purchase optimization, and to be able to make some predictions on whether or not it's going to do well or not. So as you can see, on the first day, we spent $163 to make $124. Now this day we actually made closer to around $200 but since we've been getting about 30%, 20 to 30% misattribution, it didn't record some of those leftover sales. And so we were almost profitable, but we were definitely at a loss the first day. But again, we're just at this stage where we want to build up a little bit of history and momentum, and we want to see if we can even get a couple of purchases with an add to cart optimization, because that's still pretty good. And I bid right around 1/3 of my break-even point. So I bid right around $8 for a cost per add to cart. As you can see, the CPMs were pretty high for the campaigns that we're spending. The click-through rates were pretty good. And remember, the CPA here was for cost per add to cart. So it was a little bit on the higher end, but it was still, but at a good conversion rate, this actually did convert almost profitably for this particular campaign. So then for day 2, we actually got a little bit more spend, still towards that add to cart optimization for this particular campaign, which was almost profitable. It probably was profitable when we account for any misattribution that took place. And then we launched our first checkout campaign with our original set of 3 creatives. Now here, I believe I bid right around 60 to 70% of the break-even point. So it was definitely getting up there, but when you bid a certain value, TikTok really tries hard to keep your cost per purchase under that value. And since I wasn't too sure how well the product was going to perform, I set them at pretty low budgets, right around $50 per day, and I tested a couple of different bids right around that 60 to 70% of my break-even point range, and I found one that ended up being the sweet spot. So on day 2, overall we spent $200 to make closer to $400 when we account for misattribution. So between the first 2 days, we actually finally got into the profit zone. Now on the 3rd day, all we did was bump up some of those bids that weren't spending that much. If they were profitable, or if they just weren't spending enough to even see if they were profitable, we just bumped them up a couple of dollars, in increments of around 50 cents to $1, and tried to find what was working and tried to weed out any of the bids that weren't performing well. So on the 3rd day, we actually spent a little bit less, but we actually made a little bit more, again, when we factor for misattribution, and our ROAS was at a very, very healthy, profitable point. Now, day 4, again, same thing. We just upped our bid a little bit, and we also duplicated out some of the highest performing audiences at really good bids, so that when we duplicated them, we could increase the budget and get more spend the next day. And as you can see, our main campaign spent $350 to make $1,200. It's actually a little bit closer to $1,300. So that was sitting right around a 4 ROAS on the 4th day of running this product. Now, one thing I failed to mention throughout this process is right around day 2 and day 3, I started noticing some red flags when diving into the ad group section, which is the equivalent of the ad set section on Facebook, where this little warning sign had things underneath it that were saying, hey, your ads are getting disapproved because they're violating our policies. But the problem is only about 1 in 3 ads would get disapproved when I launched. So anything that I launched would get disapproved, and then maybe another creative, and then maybe the final creative in that entire campaign would get disapproved by the end of the day, starting right around day 3. So on day 4, I actually had closer to $2,000 or $3,000 worth of ad spend getting ready to be spent. But since about 2/3 of the ads ended up getting disapproved throughout the day, it only spent around $1,000. And now this is when I started to notice that things were getting a little bit funky and that I was probably going to lose the account, because some ads were getting disapproved and some of those exact same ads were getting approved in other campaigns, and they were doing so well. So I didn't want to turn them off, and I didn't want to try to delete them or clear them off the account, because they were the only creatives that I had at the time. So then on the 5th day, I actually narrowed down by some of the best creatives, and I also that night launched some new creatives to see if they were maybe gonna get some more competitive bids, or maybe a better click-through rate, or anything to be able to give me a little bit more higher value customers or a higher ROAS. But I was still dependent on that main campaign, just fooling around with the bids and fooling around with different budgets. And that's really all that paid marketing is on any platform, and digital marketing and media buying. It's just figuring out what things are working best by testing a bunch of different things and doing more of what's working and less of what's not. And so definitely you don't want to overcomplicate this process of testing and scaling. Then on day 6, we had a little bit of a breakthrough where we were finally able to test some new creatives. We were able to test some audiences and some interests and see what was working. And this is when I started to realize that scaling on TikTok was quite simple, and you can make adjustments throughout the day. So I started with ads getting rejected, and then I would duplicate them, and some of them would get approved and some of them wouldn't. But I noticed that ads that spent maybe 20-30% of the budget and then got shut down because the ads were disapproved, I could just duplicate those and increase the budget. and get some new spend in some of those new campaigns. So this is when I started doing a little bit of horizontal scaling, and I ended the day right around $6,500 at a little bit over a 3 ROAS. Now here I noticed that the interests actually weren't performing as well as the open targeting audiences, which I kind of expected, but I want to see if any of them got any sense of traction. And it turns out one of the audiences did really well in one of those interest testing campaigns. And so what I did was I made a bunch of duplicates of that one audience, and I plugged in some new creatives and tested new bids, and I ended up finding a sweet spot that was quite profitable for the day. And again, on this day, I probably had closer to $8,000 worth of ad spend getting ready to be lined up, because I had noticed that the bids that I was setting were constantly either profitable or they weren't spending if they weren't profitable. So TikTok's bidding system was quite advanced and it protected the advertisers from not blowing too much money without being profitable. And again, although I had almost $8,000 worth of ad spend scheduled, since about 3/4 of the ads got disapproved throughout the day, I only got about 1/4 of that in spend, which was right around $2,000. And I wasn't complaining too much, but I was getting ready to reach out to support to say, what is going on? Am I violating policy? Is this some system error and some glitch that's causing me not to be able to run ads the way that I want to be able to run them? And then on our 7th and final day, we spent about $2,500 to make a little over $8,000 when we factor in that misattribution. So again, right around that 3 ROAS, so it was starting to get consistent. I had about $12,000 worth of spend scheduled for this day, believe it or not, and it only spent around $2,500. So it spent a little bit more than the day before, and it brought in a little bit more than the day before, although I was getting ready to start going parabolic. I was like 2 days away from integrating the custom content that I had paid for and started to give my editors to edit something up that was going to be worthy of running as an ad. And then this night at about 6-7 p.m., I actually got the ad account disabled. Now again, this was simply a combination of testing, of scaling the best audiences into Canada, trying different interests, trying different bids, and testing new creatives. But since TikTok perceived my ad as being in violation of policy, I ended up getting the account banned, and I reached out to support. I sent a ticket that was very meaningful, and I was saying, hey, I'm a new advertiser, and I didn't mean to violate any policies. I always review policies before I market on any platform, and I'm pretty confident that I didn't violate the policy, but if you can explain to me how I did, I would love to be able to right my wrong. And kind of like Zuck, they said, hey, we don't care, you're banned, you violated policy, and gave you that robotic response, in which sparked me to learn some circumvention tactics, very similarly to how I've had to learn circumvention tactics for Facebook over the years. Now that's a story for another time, but I just wanted to hop on here and just show you guys how possible it is to scale from 0 to 10K a day, 0 to 20K a day, even 0 to 50K a day in a matter of just a few weeks with good products, good creatives, and definitely a good product market fit on this TikTok platform. And it's a much more powerful platform than a lot of people think. So I hope this video helped you out a ton and will hopefully inspire you or encourage you to take a deep dive into TikTok and see if you can get it to convert for yourself. And if you haven't already watched my TikTok testing video or my TikTok launch strategy, then I definitely suggest that you watch both of those videos before running your first TikTok ad. And I'll have both of those videos linked somewhere below down in the description. So yeah, that's all for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.